Welcome to the Parts and Labor Podcast, the podcast that explores the strategies, systems, and stories that drive salon success. I'm Alicia, founder and CEO of Salon Scale.
And I'm Whitney, head of sales here at Salon Scale.
And welcome to the Parts and Labor Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Parts and Labor Podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Whitney.
So today our theme is all about waste. So we're going to have a lot of conversation about that. I think it's a hot topic. It's generally a big traffic driver for us, people wanting to solve the problem of waste in their salons. So we're going to talk all about that. But we wanted to start with a little bit of a bonus series. It's a little hot seat session here with Whit and Alicia. We're going to go ahead and rapid fire some questions, and it's a way for you to get to know a little bit more about us. And us to have a little bit fun with some of the questions that we don't know, what we're going to ask and answer.
Not only, do you not know? I also don't know what I'm going to ask you. So we'll see, I guess, what comes out.
So how about I go first?
Okay, good.
Okay. So, I mean, clearly before we entered the realm of Salon Scale, you were a client of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to know the real answer. But I really want to know, I did your hair for your wedding. And, I want to ask you how you felt about me quoting you and, what you felt about what I was charging you to do your hair for your wedding.
Yeah, this is really funny. I've thought about this many, many times since you've become my boss, especially now. But because so I'm American, I married a Canadian, and now I live in Canada. And so I moved to Canada, and you did my husband's hair before me. And He's a great client. Yes.
He's a great client.
Bad tipper. Good hair. But I very distinctly remember him. Like, I was planning the wedding. I didn't know, anything Canadian. I had just moved here. And he was like, for your hair, he's like, you need to go to Alicia. Like, she's the best. Like, there's going to be no one better that could do your hair. I was like, yeah. Okay. Pay for the best. Sure. And then so I called you. I didn't know you. I'd never met you. And I called you, and we spoke over the phone, and I was like, okay, I want to do a consultation. So I have 2 styles I want to try. And you're like, perfect. That'll be $100 per style. And I was like, $200. And you're like, yep. And I was like, oh my God. I had never, now keep in mind, okay, I just moved from the US. And so the Canadian dollar is 30% more. So that would be 30% higher than it was in the US, but it still feels like a 1-to-1. And I'm broke. I'm in my early 20s. I'm broke. And so I was very taken aback. And you immediately cut it to one. You slashed your price by 50%. Immediately. I didn't even say oh my God, that's so much. I think you could tell by my tone. You're like, $100. $100.
Yeah. Take $1. It was just a whole bid war.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's emotional pricing. I think I always think of you when I talk to saloners that struggle with it. Because even as the owner of a successful, even you can be slash your prices by 50% when somebody even the slightest bit balks at the price. And then when I did go in for and I feel terrible about that, by the way. Now I've thought about it many a time. But I
think I won in the end.
So you did. I paid you for the wedding. But and then when we did do the consultation, I loved the first one you did so much that we just went with that. We didn't even end up going with 2. So
I think I just remember wanting you so bad as a client. And I think I just, it's that client that's going to bring you more clients. Mm-hmm. That person has the perfect hair, the perfect look that one post is going to drive you some traffic. So I think that's actually, let's just mark it as a marketing spend. It was an advertising.
Okay,
so I didn't cut it. You paid 50%, but the other went to an advertising budget.
Okay, so you would have gone lower. Is that what I'm hearing from you? You would have done it for free?
I would have done it for free.
Okay, that's good to know.
I do remember, though, quoting and showing up to this wedding, and you guys, all of your friends from Virginia, hair to your ass, and I am sitting there. I have 7 freaking bridesmaids to do, and I'd not you didn't send me any pictures of your bridesmaids. So I'm like, oh, just the whole family. And I still had to do the entire, like, the
The moms
side
and the grooms. And they all wanted cuts. All of them were just touch up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was, I've never worked so hard in my life, but
You did a great job.
it was well worth it. You were a stunning bride.
Oh, thanks.
So let's put you in the next question.
Okay. Was that your standard price for everybody, or did you make it up on the spot?
I had kind of a base, like, especially when with bridal, I used to base it off hourly. So it usually was like $100 an hour. So I usually would start there. With you, that got slashed in that side of things. But I think like when it came to styling, I didn't have a lot of other expenses. So it was easy to kind of go by hour, just $100 flat and kind of go from there. I think too that it kind of would change a little bit if like hair was different. Like if it wasn't a full updo or style, like if someone had like shorter hair, it was just like more of a blowout. So that would be the only differentiator because it didn't take as much time.
Can I ask my last question? Just spitballing off that. Have you ever, at any point in your career, changed the price based on how much money you thought somebody had?
I feel like we might need to like put a lie detector. Like we should do that in one of the episodes. Just strap me to a lie detector test. Yes.
Then we don't need the lie detector. It can't get worse than that. You admitted it.
Well, I feel like I'm on it. So it would be like, beep. Like there's no lie. You could see it in my face. I'm like,
she looked left.
No.
She looked left. She's lying.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know your high ticket clients, like you know status, especially like being in a smaller city, you knew that kind of side of things. So yeah, there's kind of like that class where you can kind of know what you can kind of do, and sometimes you lean into that. Sometimes you track that.
More so, God, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but was it more so like charging more for clients you knew could afford it, or charging less for clients you didn't think could afford it?
I wasn't a huge emotional discounter. Like a lot of the times that people couldn't afford it, I find other solutions. So I got really good right away at making sure that like I still got the client what they needed, but got good at holding my value, especially as the leader in the business. Like if I was starting to do that, then like my whole staff would likely do that too. So I had to really hold that. So I think you're in like a position of privilege when you're an owner of a business because you're probably the highest price point. So like it's easier, like you come with that kind of label and that title. So it's like you're able to kind of like stay pretty firm on that. And therefore you don't really attract like budget or discount clients. Like you kind of attract, except you. No,
50%.
No,
I'm not coming.
But like I think you kind of attract sometimes. You'll attract a higher ticket client. But I mean, when I first started, it was probably more like that. But that was like way long ago, so that was different. So okay, now I have one for you.
Oh no!
On the topic of charging.
Okay.
As someone who still consistently goes and gets your hair done, tell me about your experience at checkout. I think a lot of people, I'm going to like add more to this question because that's what we're going to do. But I think a lot of people are so, especially stylists, are so afraid to bring their client to the front and charge them. And someone like yourself that has a lot of hair, a lot of density, and takes a lot of time, you know, the ticket's going to be higher. So what is like your perspective? Like, what is your perspective when you get to the checkout process?
This is why the salon I go to, I chose specifically because they charge hourly plus product. Because to me, as somebody with like a ton of hair who wants like a lot of lightener, there's nothing scarier to me on a pricing menu than 200 plus. Because I'm like, oh my God, like, what does that mean? Like the plus is infinite. It might as well be like the square root of the 200 because like that's what my bill is going to look like. Like it could go to infinity. And so with hourly, I like that I can pick the level of the stylist. I see a very clear hourly rate plus product. And I know at this point, I know like how much about product is going to cost for my hair. And so I can multiply the hourly rate. I know how long I sit in the chair. It takes 5 hours every single time. Kind of no matter what. My hair takes 5 hours. So I can multiply that hourly rate by 5. I know what the product cost is. And I have a general idea when I get up to there, like the checkout, what it's going to be. But I do like that. And I always, like, we're in Canada. I tap my card and I go. I don't ask for like a printed receipt or an email or anything, but I do always ask about like what the product total is. I find that like fascinating because, if my price is $500 and $100 is product, it's like, okay, they didn't just make $500. Like, 20% of it went to what they need to purchase to do my hair. So it's always a lot. That's one thing I know consistently. Like before I go, I just know, I don't know what it's going to be exactly, but I know it's going to be a lot. And I just mentally prepare myself for that each time.
And you can almost like estimate it more because you know those kind of parameters of like hourly plus that.
I love hourly.
So do you think that your pricing, like just like when you're doing your own coding in your head, do you feel like it's more consistent now with like it's in range versus prior to?
Yeah, I had no idea. And I always, because I didn't know, like no one ever said, I've never seen, and maybe it is on there and I just don't look. I just go to like color surfaces, like look at, okay, balayage is this much. Like, okay, it's starting at 200. But I've never seen, okay, if you go for actuals, that's $20. I don't know how many actuals my hair takes. I don't know what they're charging me for actuals. Before I started working at Salon Scott, I always thought it was like that they were ripping me off. I didn't think like the product, I always thought, it's funny now because when I talk to salon owners, they'll tell me a lot of times they're like, I don't want the client to see that it's only like, the product only costs this much and I'm charging them this. I'm like, I always thought it was way less than that. Like I feel shocked as a client in the opposite. Like I can't believe it's $100 worth of product to do my hair. I thought it'd be like $3. Like I thought product basically costs like nothing. And so I find that because you can go to Walmart and you can get a box for $10. And I thought in my mind, even though salon owners are using professional products, I thought because they're buying so much of it, they'd get like a much bigger wholesale discount. And so
that is a great point because I think that's like the number one thing on the salon side is like but if they knew what the cost is, then they'll like think I'm charging way too much for my time because there's such a like stigma of like your worth and your value and what you're charging. And like no one wants to display what the actual cost because it could have been $8 of the product and I charged you $100 an hour and took 2 hours. So if it's $208, it's like, why are you charging $100? Like it's like a direct attack at your worth. But like customers that go to salons, just like you're saying, is like
we know.
They know, and they're coming for like the fact that they don't have to put the box of color on their own head, and they don't have to. They're coming for your like talent. They're like your placement. Like they're coming for the labor.
That's exactly right. It's the same logic as why you'd go to get your nails done and you'd pay $50, $60, $70 to a professional when you could go to a store and get an entire bottle of nail polish and do your nails for a year based on this bottle of polish for $5. Well, why do you go to, like, the nail polish doesn't cost that much, right? Because you can buy the whole bottle. Why do you go to a professional? Because if you do it yourself, it looks bad. You're paying for the expertise of somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Hold on.
Now my mind is like heading to our theme of today and the topic of waste. And so as we kind of move into that, the question, like just fully candid, like, do you think the average like customer like cares about waste? Like, do you think that they're like
customer? Or
stylist? Customer.
No.
Do you think a customer is ever like, there was product in that bowl and I was charged? Do you think that they ever link those two together?
I've never even looked. I've never seen the bowl. Like I've never looked at the bowl. Like, and I know, if there's waste, like I'll be like, even knowing the inner workings of salon scale and knowing about parts of labor, I still like, I don't care because I know that it's minimal,
And it seems like, the customer's focus is really the labor side. It's like more so like the application than the actual ingredients going in.
Right.
Although those ingredients are very expensive.
Yeah, now. Yeah, no kidding.
It's like you're paying someone else's tab when you're at the back bar. So like the back bar is like a bar, right? So like as a stylist, especially like when you're like junior intermediate, you're just getting your feels in the back bar. There's a big difference between like house vodka and Grey Goose vodka. And now with ingredients that are coming out, like they're now embedded in them. So like they have like different proteins and bonders built into the product. So you can like pick the baseline, which is like $8 a tube, or now this new like bonder, pH builder, whatever they have built into the product is now like $13 a tube. And because we're marketed to, they both kind of contribute to the same end result, same tone or whatever. One kind of might give a little bit more health or like a little bit more like preventative care or something to the hair. And so like it attracts you to it. But the art is, as a bartender, like you absolutely need to know the difference between Grey Goose and House Vodka. You can't charge the same. And so it's like so known in the bar language that way. But in the salon language, like we still kind of do that. And so on the topic of waste, you know, if we get that, it just becomes a multiplier, right? So I think like stylists, and we've talked about this in past conversation, where waste is, it's like the average stylist isn't in the back bar trying to overmix and trying to free pour.
Right.
And it's the same analogy as if you are a junior bartender or you're a bartender and you have like a lineup, like you have 100 drinks you got to pour really quick. Of course there's going to be spillage. Like, of course you're going to move really fast because you're going really fast. So it's like, I think the velocity or the rate increasing of your waste is the rate of how packed your stylist is too, and how fast they're rushing, right? Is your stylist rush? Because like that's something you need to monitor too. And so I think like the average stylist is not like back there purposely trying to like go to town on this like open bar situation. Yeah. So the best thing to do is to, understand, what is it, and like how do I slow that down, or how do I understand how to, control that a little bit more?
Well, and I think too, so I have a few points towards this. In fact, I did a demo the other day, and pretty much every time I do a demo, particularly with a commission salon owner, and I say like, what brings us here today? And they say waste. Like, waste is the biggest issue. Once we figure that out, like, I'll have so much more money. And I understand why they think that, and why waste is eating their entire share of the profit, because like it's really tangible. Like you see all these like half empty bowls in the sink and you're like, color costs a lot of money. This is where it's going. This is why my revenue isn't matching my profit, because all these bowls of color in the sink. But what I try and lead the salon on to understand is like, it's not like, for one, like you said, there's always going to be some like magnitude of waste. But if you were to scrape all of those bowls into a bucket, and like, it's not that much money. If you have a big gap between revenue and profit in your salon, it's not because of the waste, it's because of the pricing structure. And around waste, like I did a demo the other day, and the salon owner gets on, and I say like, what brings us here today? And he's like, the waste. He's like, I am so fed up. And it leads salon owners to be angry, like at the stop, because it's like, sometimes they're not profitable at all. And you see stylists unintentionally overmixing, and it feels intentional, if they know you're not profiting, if they know you're struggling and they're being careless about what they mix, it can build up a lot of resentment in the salon owner. And so he gets on the call and he says, like, I need to fix the waste. My stylists are stealing from me in waste, because that's what it is. And I've heard that word, like this theft, stealing, thrown around talking about waste. And I've heard it from the stylist perspective towards the owner when they talk about taking any product costs off. And there's a lot of just like, you're stealing from me, talking about like these product charges, or like what to do with like, the actual product. And it drives resentment on both sides. So I think, when waste is a problem, because it's always falling on the owner. If you have 15 stylists and there's $2 worth of waste for every single stylist, and it falls on the owner to not only pay for that waste, give commission on that waste, and then repurchase the color that was wasted, like that's a lot for one person. So this is a solution, parts plus labor. Using salon scale is a solution where you don't really have to worry, like waste doesn't have to be this big problem. And then what parts plus labor can do is infinite compared to just managing waste. My second story is like I did a demo with a gal this was like probably like a year ago at this point. But, whenever I get on a call and they say I'm here for waste, what I gently try and say is like, I think the problem is a pricing issue rather than waste. And we got off the call. She did a trial, or no, she didn't do a trial, but she said, I checked in after about a month and she said, we're not interested. We weighed our waste for a month and it actually wasn't that much money. And I'm like, that's exactly my point. Waste actually isn't the issue. Like, you came to me because you had a cost issue, right? Like, you weren't profiting like you should. You thought it was a waste, but when you weighed it after an entire month, you realized the waste was like $100, $200. And that's actually not that much. But the issue is still there, right? You're still not going to, if you don't change anything, you're still not going to make any money. So it's a pricing issue. It's the way that your pricing is set up. That's what actually needs to change. And when you change that, then you'll cover the waste too. Like, the waste is like an added bonus. You don't have to then worry about the waste either.
I think like sometimes people need to like follow the KPIs back and key performance indicators for those that need to know. Waste is the worst KPI you can absolutely track in your salon because it's a negative connotation. When you circle people around it, it already makes people feel like bad, like they did something shameful. And you're creating, a not a great environment to like usher people. And then on the other side, what are you doing? Hit this revenue goal, hit this target, push more, get more clients in your chair. So you're making their efficiency like triple their efficiency, try to make them work more, which is making them work faster, which is making them probably waste more and be more like the spillage is going to go up because you're pushing them that. And then you punish someone to a waste metric is like, no. So the first thing to understand is like, what is waste? Waste is a byproduct. It's the after, it's what comes out of the product. So when you think about backing that up, it like kind of centers around what you just said, which is pricing. And it's like, we think it's waste and we look at that, but what we realize is like, is our pricing supporting waste? The answer is probably going to say no. The number one question I always say to a salon, if I give you the waste number, what would you do with the number?
Trent.
Right? Trent.
Tell Trent's story.
Oh gosh. I remember probably 3 months in and launching Salon Scale, I went on a Canadian tour. I did. Tour. And I remember meeting this salon owner, and his name was Trent. And Trent had a multi-location salon and just super aggressive right away, where it's like, the waste in my salon, these stylists, there's bowls mixing everywhere. It's like blame. Like I could just feel the the finger pointing at every stylist. Like I could feel the tension in the salon. Like this guy was like such like an intense, like it's their problem, they're wasting the salon. And so I tried to explain to him, like, well, like, how are you tracking this? How are you pricing this? He had service fees. He had all these other ways. How much have you communicated that with the team? Like, that's probably creating tension because they have now they had a 15% service fee. So like they knew that 15%. So like, even though that 15% was there, it probably still wasn't covering some of the services. And that's why he's mad. But then they also don't understand because there's not a tangible information that's there. And then by looking at waste, that's a fraction of the like product dispensed itself. So I just remember like being so almost like degraded, to be honest. Is like, I'm not gonna have you come in here with your new technology to measure, like, what do I care? Like, what do I care about them, like, understanding that? Like, I just want to know what the waste is. And I just instantly said, well, like, if I could give you what the waste number is, Trent, what would you do with that number? Because there's only really two things you can do. Continue to eat the cost, take it from your stylist, or what you're probably going to have to do is pass it on to the consumer. And like, he looked at me and he never wanted to like admit, like I could see his face was just like, oh, fuck this girl, like I just see him like, okay, you're right. And that's the story of Trent like that. Like, but the thing is like, it was Trent was defensive because he's been running his ship for a long time. And like, he had his model, he had that. Yeah. Like that model might've worked like, 25 years ago when we were using $3 worth of color and we weren't servicing as much color. Now, 80, 90% of your customers coming in are getting color services, and the cost of color is a lot higher. The trends are a lot more intense, and the actual, the stylists are a lot more individualized. Like they have their own experience with their guests, and they're doing a lot more than they ever have. And so with all those components and, the evolution of like stylists in general, like technology needed to catch up. Like you needed a way to separate these things because it wasn't $3 anymore. It's now like $30. Like you're looking at a 10x lift. And so just tracking waste is like a fraction of that metric. And so like, again, it's like the worst KPI to go off of. The first thing is my product covered? So is my pricing covering the cost of the tube used? And is it built in where I have a replenishment? Like I'm capturing enough revenue from this appointment that I not only have that tube paid for, but the next one's on its way. And I don't have to take from any other profit to be able to support the cost of doing my business today. That's all you have to ask yourself. So if you only focus on the waste and you work yourself back, it's just like these are small little metrics that have been ways that we've tried to handle this like in the past, but they don't give you any results. They create hurt feelings. They create toxicity in the salon. They create separation and division between salon owner and stylist. And the best way you can do it is just be transparent. Here's the cost. Someone needs to pay for it. The best thing is the customer is going to pay for exactly what they're using. No more, just the exact amount. And now you take that off the discussion table. So now there's just no issue there. And being mindful comes with knowledge.
Yeah.
Being a salon that is very environmentally conscious and making all the changes in your business, whether it is making like eco heads or like changing these different patterns in your business, it's a great thing to do. But focusing on waste and waste reduction needs a baseline. It needs an understanding of what is the average amount of products that we use and how do we reduce that next quarter? How do we look at similar services and try to get the whole team to kind of work together to find out how we can be more efficient in our pattern selection and in the products that we're using? Again, Grey Goose or House. How do we understand the true cost of what we're doing in our business and become, a way of understanding that? The only way you do that is with transparency and becoming efficient, understanding these things. Get the data, get the technology, get things to kind of tell you those things.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you use it as a punishment, it's not going to go well for either party. There's been, if a salon owner is using it as a punishment and holding it over their heads, they're not going to want to log the waste. In fact, I was on a call the other day and I was she said she was here because she wanted to reduce waste. And I was showing her the waste feature and she said, they're not going to want to reweigh the bowl. And then I was like, yes, exactly. Especially if it's something they're going to get in trouble for. So let's just change the pricing model to incorporate for this. Because then I always say with our waste feature, because we do have a feature that will reduce waste and it's a great feature, but I would say the point of it is to reduce the ordering for next time, to bring it down for next time, because that money is gone. Just like you told Trent, the money's been spent and somebody has to pay for it, right? So focus on doing better next time.
With that being said, I think, there's so much more to kind of dive into this. And I think that, like Whitney kind of had mentioned, is most people come to us because it's a subjective thing. It's been planted in our heads where we think it's a waste issue, but that's a whole dynamic between waste versus cost. And I think it's really important to make sure your costs are covered before you analyze waste. If you can ensure that things are being covered, then you can find those baselines, those metrics of, what is our average waste? And if we tried to rally a team and we try to sit our team down, if I was trying to hype you up right now, I'd be like, hey, Whit, listen, we are wasting $750 a week in color. And we want to reduce that by, $100. How confident are you in reducing that? versus if I said, hey, Whitney, every single color that you do this week, like if you charge out your color and you use $750 worth of color, I now like we now are going to grow our revenues that side. We're going to grow 750 and be able to make sure that next week all this product's covered. Like what is going to like trigger you a little bit more?
Yeah, no kidding. Like knowing that it's covered, I would say 100%, because otherwise I would be waiting till you like went around the corner and then I'd be dumping like the waste in a garbage can when you weren't looking, and then I'd do that.
Yeah, I think that like the big thing is your team signed up with you for a reason. They want to support you. And so like give the knowledge. Like no stylist that works at a salon wants to see things given away. Like that's not the intention. Like, oh, I can't wait to just like rob the salon I work for that I care about. Like that's not the reality of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so like it's no different. I guess we come back to like the conversation of like bartenders, but it's the same thing. And like you've said this a lot in the past. It's like a lot of times bartenders will give like free drinks on the house and all that stuff. But it only takes like you measured that shit for 2 days and you're like, you guys gave away $800 worth of product.
We got in a lot of trouble.
And that is holding us back from having the education in this business, getting the remodel that we need, getting a new dryer because it's on its last legs. Like these are the things that like when you have evidence, you have those facts, you're going to be able to like produce those to your teams a little bit more. But like this, again, it's like cost versus waste. And like, if I'm voting hands down, this is a cost issue, and to double down on that. And if you focus on cost, guess what happens to waste?
Goes away.
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem. And I wholeheartedly agree. I think that if, you know, waste is, like I said, it's tangible. It's right there. It's in the sink. You think this is where all your money is going. And whenever I hear a waste issue, I think, okay, they really just need more money. Like the owner's mad because their revenue isn't matching their profit. Need more cash flow. Parts will say, well, we'll get you that cash flow. It'll get it like that will. And then when you have more money, you can pay your stylist more money too. Like it's just all of the issues will go away. Most of them. When you have more cash flow. And it's, like I said, waste is just an added bonus of fixing, like doing that little tweak to the pricing structure where you never have to worry about color being an expense in the business again. It's now a revenue stream. And that will transform everything in the salon and the attitude, like the whole vibe of the salon. I've talked about this many times before, but working in a spot, I worked for a space for 6 years that was in the red the entire time I worked there. And it sucked. Like it was, nobody got raises for 3 years in a row. We didn't get bonuses. We didn't get a holiday party. Like everything just gets cut. You're not getting the education. Like, and it's just tense. Like it's always looming over your head. Like we're in the red. Heard it all the time. Versus working for a spot that has that money, like working for a space that can do those nice things for employees, can do nice things for clients, that can bring in like those like specialty drinks or like pastries. Like if I see a pastry at a salon, I'm going. Like I will go for the like a donut, you know? And so being able to provide those things that attract clients and that retain stylists, like all that comes with increased cash flow, and parts plus labor increases cash flow quicker than probably anything you could ever add. And yeah, including waste.
Well, I think that, every salon owner that listens to this, again, it comes down to really the numbers. Like if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And I think being empowered that way and understanding that and focusing on the right things can do what you just said. It can help move you from that resentment and moving from the like pointing like waste to like, how are we going to cover all these things? Or if they only knew what I was going through, like instead of an us versus them, like you could be one step away from never feeling like that. And so I want to remind you that, if you are listening to this and you're like, okay, I really want to know more about Salon Scale, to like head to the website at least. Like head to the website and you can dive into so much information. We have a ton of content, a ton of information on there. Or like hop on a demo with Whitney. We have a team that is dedicated to just answer those questions. And maybe there's just a few things that you want to look over. Maybe you want to look at the product, get a little bit more of a tour of it, or you want to understand more parts and labor. So with that being said, thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.